Hey, this is Vo from Vocal Pockets, and I'm here to teach you how to use groove builders to make music more authentic to you, find the right groove and bounce for your beats, and develop your own signature groove. This video consists of two parts. The first part will show you how to add and save groove builders in FL Studio. The second part will show you how to apply groove builders. Before beginning, I recommend enhancing FL Studio's PPQ, or parts per quarter note, to 960 to enhance FL Studio's reading of groove builders. To do this, go to Options, Audio Settings, then click on Project, and ensure that the time base says 960. Now, let's start with adding and saving groove builders. Your download may include FL Studio score files. If so, I recommend adding that folder to the browser within FL Studio, and I've done so by dragging and dropping that folder into the browser. By adding the folder here, you can easily see the groove builder files within FL Studio and play before and after examples that give you a sense of the balance that the particular groove builder can add. In case either your download does not come with FL Studio score files, your version of FL Studio is not compatible with the files, or you otherwise want to convert more groove builders to FL Studio score files, here's what to do. Add the MIDI version of groove builders in the piano roll. Then within the piano roll, you're going to go to File and click Save Score File As, which will create the groove builder file. There's more information on this within the user manual included in your download. Focusing back on the browser, when you look at groove builder files, you'll see a naming convention. Here's what everything means. First, you'll see a number. Groove builders are numbered from 1 to an n number, with groove builder 1 having the most significant timing impact when applied at 100%. In other words, groove builder 1 is going to have more swing and will move the notes more than groove builder 15, for example. Each numbered groove builder also has a different VD4H profile. VD4H stands for velocity designed for hi-hats and is designed to give your hi-hats more bounce, though you can use this feature on other elements of your track, like conga patterns, for example. Next in the naming convention, you'll see V pockets, which stands for vocal pockets. The capitalized letters next to V pockets represent the genre that inspired the groove builder. The genres are further explained in the documentation included with your download. After the genre name, you'll see the title of the groove builder, and then finally, you have the timing settings. With respect to the timing settings, for many styles of music, 16th note quantization is going to be sufficient. Generally, if you have more than 16 hits of a particular instrument and measure, you could use a more granular timing setting like 132. If you only have 7 hits of a particular instrument, you could either use 1/8 or 1/16. In short, if you choose 1/16, all your notes are moved to the nearest 16th note grid. If you choose 1/8, all your notes are moved to the nearest 8th note grid. Finally, if you see a T in front of a timing setting, that designates that the groove builder was designed for a triplet bass feel. Now let's transition to applying groove builders to find a groove that speaks to us and start developing our signature groove. We have a standard beat in FL Studio to which we will apply groove builders. Within your product download, you should see 3 MIDI drum files marked with Quantize to the grid in parentheses. I've added those to my project. There's a MIDI file called hi-hat, which you should set up to trigger a hi-hat sound of your choice, a file called kick, which you should set up to trigger a kick sound of your choice, and a file called snare, which you should set up to trigger a snare sound of your choice. No matter whether you're using a drum kit or the sampler within FL Studio for your drum sounds, feel free to move the location of the notes up and down the piano roll until you find a sound of your liking. You do not need to import any tempo information. For this project, I'm going to be creating at a tempo of 100 BPM. So let's select the hi-hat track, and I'll open this copy of the track here. And then I'm going to open up the quantizer, and you could press Alt-Q or Option-Q if you're on a Mac to do so. Now here's how to think about applying groove builders. To use an analogy, if your beat is food, groove builders are seasoning, and without seasoning, food can be bland. When you apply seasoning to a dish, you start at 0 and slowly add seasoning to taste. In other words, you don't dump all the seasoning in at once and then try to pare it back. Use the same seasoning approach when applying groove builders. In the quantizer, start with the timing strength at 0 and slowly blend the amount up by clicking with your mouse and dragging up to an amount that you like. After you find a timing amount that you like, you now get to add one of my favorite features, which is VD4H, or velocity designed for hi-hats. Apply the seasoning approach here. Click with your mouse and slowly increase the velocity amount in the quantizer to an amount that sounds good to you. In terms of the other settings, I usually keep the sensitivity all the way to the right. And then on the drop down here, I select leave duration. Now I'll apply the groove builder using the seasoning approach. And to accept the results, I'll just click accept. So here's where we started. And here's where we got in a couple seconds using groove builders. Now, we've only touched the hi-hats. Other than keeping the beat as is, there are 4 creative decisions we can make from here, and this is how you start developing your signature groove. 1, uniformity, which means using the same groove builder at the same start time percentage as the hi-hats. 2, subuniformity, which means using the same groove builder but at a different start time percentage as the hi-hats. 3, mix, which means using a different groove builder for the other elements of your tracks. And 4, submix. Submix means dividing a track into 2 and using a different groove builder for each part. For example, if I wanted to use submix on the hi-hats, I could use one groove builder for the first 8 hits and a different one for the next 8 hits. For this demo, I'll use mix for the kick and snare. So I'll open up my kick pattern, pull up the quantizer, and I'll select a different groove builder. And let's do one inspired by an R&B track. I brought the start time down to 0 as well as the velocity, and I'll slowly increase the start time to taste. So that sounded good to me, and I'll move on to the snare. All right, so that sounded good to me too. So here's where we started. And here's where we are now with groove builders. Now let's talk about presenting tracks to a vocalist. One way to tell if a groove builder is making an impact other than using your ears is to do the Mary Had a Little Lamb test. Well, what's that? Play the track with the groove builder and repeat the line, Mary Had a Little Lamb. Then play the track without the groove builder, and if your enunciation of that line, Mary Had a Little Lamb, is different, you could tell the groove builder is making an impact. So let's do that briefly right now. I'll play the track and I'll allow you yourself to repeat the line, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then I'll play the completely quantized version. Quantized version. So if your enunciation was different, imagine how a vocalist can come up with a new hook or flow when you send them a beat that has a groove builder. I usually season my tracks with groove builders until I myself am able to come up with a flow. That way, if I send the beat to an artist and they say, this is cool, I'm trying to figure out what to do with it, I could pitch a flow to them that may lead to the next catchy hook or flow, and I'm adding that much more value to the relationship, and you could do the same when you use this tool. Something else to keep in mind is that if you ever switch samples or add effects to your sounds, you can easily recalibrate the right groove by resetting what you've done, bringing the timing number back to 0, and increasing it to your liking based on the sounds that you may have modified. You can also use groove builders to vary the arrangement of your song. For example, you can use one groove for the verse and a different one for the chorus or bridge. Now, let's say you're the type of producer that likes to start producing with melodies first. It could be a MIDI melody or maybe a sample from a pack. Those samples and melodies have their own bounce to them, and you can use groove builders to find the groove that's best suited for your samples and melodies. And this is how I do it. I draw 16 hi-hat notes and apply the timing information like we discussed to find a pocket and space that matches the melody or sample. Then you can take that timing amount that you select, and you could apply that same timing amount and same groove builder to your kick and snare and other elements of your track. Or you can use a technique like we discussed today, like subuniformity, mix, or submix. So here's an example of me doing so. I have the melody that I'm going to play, and I've selected a groove builder. I'm going to blend the start time in VD4H to an amount that sounds good to me, and we'll see where we get. All right, so here's where we started. And here's where we got using groove builders. Finally, I'll share some additional creative fun. If you use a drum plugin that provides the ability to trigger different samples depending on the velocity of a note, you could come up with some really fun results. Here's an example of me doing so using Battery 4. So as you heard there, as I increased or decreased the VD4H, I got different rhythmic results. You can use a technique like this for the main part of your song, for the bridge, or perhaps even the outro. This technique also works well if you wanted to use pitch versions of a hi-hat. For example, if you have a primary hi-hat sound and transpose it up or down some semitones for certain hits of the hi-hat, you can really experiment with different feelings in that respect using groove builders. So I will end this video with a challenge. For your next 3 beats, create versions that are using groove builders, and then create a separate version that's completely quantized and does not use VD4H. See which one sounds more authentic to you as a producer and which one gives you better bounce. Feel free to tag us on Instagram at Vocal Pockets with any videos of you using groove builders. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that this was helpful. And if it was, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully that day is spent making music.